How's everybody doing today? Um, I wanted to go ahead and cover something that is kind of a different subject, but it's very real, and I can verify this myself just by my own personal experiences. This sounds crazy what I'm going to tell you guys here, but I believe this to be the truth. I really do. Um, you know, when you're dealing with something like this, it's kind of a touchy subject because a lot of people would say, well, how do we prove something like that? I mean, we don't, well, I'll tell you what, you can prove something like what I'm about to tell you guys. Anybody can prove it. Now, the Bible has certain references to, places like the valley of the shadow of death. Now, like what we read that in the Bible, we don't really know what that is, the valley of the shadow of death. But from my own personal experiences, I can tell you that the valley of the shadow of death to me is a dimension. It's a place, an actual place, a physical place, but it's not a normal dimension that God would want us to be in. That's why in the Bible He doesn't, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for Thou art with me. Thou art with me. Even when we go through that shadow of death, God is still with us. When we go into that dimension, and I'm going to get into that here in a minute, God is still with us. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for Thou art with me. Thou art my rod and my staff. Thou comfort me. So, now I myself have been in this, I got to tell you, I've been in this shadow of death dimension, in and out of my life. We all have. We all have. We just didn't know it. We didn't know what the heck we were walking through. We didn't know what we were walking through. But I'll tell you right now, it's a dimension of sin, and it's an actual dimension that exists on this earth. It's definitely on this earth. I can't say whether it's on other planets. I can't say whether it's in the universe or whatever, but on this earth, there is a dimension of sin. I can tell you that firsthand because I've been there many times, and so have all of you listening, or anybody watching this right now. You just didn't know it, and I'm going to explain this in here in a minute. Try to get into this a little bit deeper, but basically, what happens is when we sin, and when we break God's laws, we don't just sin and break God's laws. Like that would be enough, if we just did that. Like that would be bad enough. We could all agree, Christians can agree on that, right? If it was just that, well, we just broke God's law. We just sinned. That's all we did. There's nothing else that actually happened to us. Well, that's not true at all. In fact, every single time that we break one of God's 10 commandments, one of His 10 commandments, His major commandments, He already listed the dimension that we would go into, and He called it the curse in the Bible. He calls it other things too, the valley of the shadow of death, things like that. When we enter into that reality, we enter into the dimension of sin. Now, here's the thing: people are like, "Well, what do you mean we enter into the dimension of sin?" Well, what I'm saying is, your reality changes. Your reality changes. Now, there is a way that people could test this theory that I'm talking about. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. I wouldn't, but then again, some people have to test it to prove it. They have to test it out to prove it. I can tell you right now, when you commit adultery on your wife, you go into this dimension. Now, that could be through watching, pornography. That could be through actually physically cheating on her with another woman. You go into this dimension. For how long, I can't say. At least until you stop doing the adulterous behavior. That's one way you go into this dimension. Another way you can go into this dimension is by stealing, through lying. Any of the 10 commandments. What I just listed are on the 10 commandments. Now, God made that covenant with Moses. Remember now, it was something that God Himself, okay, said that these 10 commandments are going to stand the test of time. He never said one day these 10 commandments are going to come to an end. He said they're going to stand the test of time. So in other words, they still exist today. And when we break the 10 commandments, we go into the dimension of sin. Now I'm going to get into that even deeper and deeper. But basically, what we're dealing with here is our mind shifts. Our mind shifts. Okay. Now we don't even know sometimes that it's happening. But when we go into this dimension of sin, you guys have to understand, there are fallen beings on this earth, and there are also evil beings on this earth. There are good beings, there are in-between beings, and there are evil beings. Now, you can call it the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's one way to look at it. And by the way, that movie's not just a coincidence. That title of that movie and that name, that movie's actually teaching you something. You know, every movie has a symbol behind it, symbolic purpose to it. Most of them. Every good movie, let's put it that way. So now, another way you could go into this dimension, believe it or not, people don't know this, okay, because I've proven this, and it's not, this is a manufactured way to go into the dimension of sin. Who lives in the dimension of sin? Who lives there? Who primarily calls that home? Who calls that their home? Because it's a real dimension, and who calls that home? I'll tell you right now who calls it home. It's evil ones. It's Satan himself, but it's also his followers. It's demons. It's people who are children of sin or who love sin. Okay, the Bible talks about that. Son of perdition, son of sin, children of disobedience, children of sin. Now, these are the people whose consciousness actually resides in that dimension of sin. We'll get into that here in the next video.